Good morning, Ocean Rangers, and thanks for joining us for another Summer Kids Club episode this morning. My name is Kaya, and I'm coming to you live from the Aquarium of the Pacific. And this morning, we are going to be talking all about invertebrates. Are you excited? I hope so, because not only am I going to be talking about invertebrates, I'm going to be focusing on some of the more extreme invertebrates out there. So hopefully you'll be more excited about invertebrates in general. And if you're not sure what that word means, then don't worry. The first thing I'll be covering is what is an invertebrate. Now, while you're watching, I would love to hear from you. If you'd like to participate along, if you have any questions or observations you'd like to share with me, text us in 562-286-1838. I have Cynthia at the computer ready to take your questions and pass them on to me. I also have Jen in the studio here who's going to be making all of the magical things happen behind me. And if you're not watching this right now, if you're watching this later, we'd still love to hear from you. You are welcome to email us at live@lbaop.org, and somebody will get back to you. And if you don't feel like texting, you can still participate by maybe talking with a family member, maybe drawing or writing some of your thoughts down. Any way you feel like it, we would love for you to be involved. And with that, Ocean Rangers, I think we should start thinking about what is an invertebrate? What does that mean? So I'm going to hold it up for you so you can see it. In case this is a new term for you, if you've been watching our programs, you might already be familiar with this. But invertebrate, what does that mean? So it might seem like a big word, but an invertebrate is really just an animal that does not have a backbone or any bones on the inside of its body whatsoever. I know, pretty strange, right? If you take a moment, feel your own backbone, maybe bend down, you can stretch a little bit. I know I like to do that in the morning. You might notice that your spine has all these little bumps on it. Those bumps are called vertebrae. And so we are called vertebrates because we have that spine. So invertebrates don't have that whatsoever. Now, if I were to ask you what your favorite animal is and you were to picture it, my guess is that most of you will be thinking of a vertebrate. If you'd like to text me in your favorite animal and maybe prove me wrong, maybe your favorite animal is an invertebrate, that would be great. But even though we usually think of vertebrates, 90% of all of the animals on this earth are invertebrates. So there's a lot of them out there, and some of them have some amazing adaptations that I'm hopefully going to introduce you to today, get you excited about them, because there's some pretty amazing marine invertebrates out there. Now, the first invertebrate group I'm going to be talking about, so I'll be talking a little bit about a few different groups, going over their general characteristics, and then highlighting some of their more extreme members of this group in general. And the first one I'm going to talk about is right behind me. Do you recognize any of the animals behind me? Let's take a look. So this is a look at one of our tide pool habitats here at the aquarium. We call this the coastal corner. You might see there's these animals right here with the tentacles waving, our anemones. But I'm going to start off by talking about this animal right here. Do you recognize that? Our sea stars. Now, you might be familiar with sea stars in general. Have you ever seen one before? Maybe out? Oh, here's another picture of them. Some bat stars here. Maybe if you've gone tide pooling before, you might have seen them if you are local here. Or maybe if you live in another part of the world, you might also have some tide pools and seen them. Now, sea stars are a part of a group of invertebrates called echinoderms. And all that means is spiny skin. So this group of animals also includes sea urchins, which have lots of spikes all over them, and sand dollars, which are not so spiky, but are still members of this family. But if you look at them, do they look like very extreme animals to you? Well, don't let their shape fool you. There are plenty of extreme adaptations for this group of animal. Oh, I see some people have texted in their favorite animals. Shinja, your favorite animal is a penguin. Amazing. I think they are so cute. I hope you enjoyed our penguin class the other day. Got to learn all about them. And Concha, your favorite animal is a sea star. Oh, I'm so excited we get to talk more about them. If you have a favorite fact about sea stars, I would love to hear them. I also think they're very pretty. They come in lots of different colors as well. All right, so why am I giving this animal so much attention? Why am I considering it an extreme animal? So to answer that question, we have to start thinking about how this animal eats. So they look very beautiful and uniform color on the outside or on the top of them, right? What's happening underneath their bodies though? What does it look like there? And I'd also like to prompt you to think about, where is their mouth? Where do they put their food? Do we see a mouth over here or any sort of face at all? No, right? So they have definitely a different type of body. And this is actually, I think, something that's important to note about invertebrates in general, is that because they don't have bones or spines, we can see a huge diversity in body types, body plans that we don't really see as much with vertebrates. Pretty much all vertebrates have the exact same, very similar body plans because of our skeletons are all actually pretty similar. They just, have evolved slightly different functions. But invertebrates, we see a huge diversity in body shapes and body systems in general. So sea stars, what's going on underneath this beautiful colors that we see here? Well, for instance, if we think about where they live, many of them do live in tide pools, like I mentioned, and they need to hold on to things, right? So what do they use to hold on? So if we have waves crashing over them, it's a very rough environment. So being able to stick is very, very important. So in order to help them do this, they have what we call tube feet all over there underneath of them. Perfect. Thank you, Jen. So we can see all these what look like little dots are actually little feet that we call tube feet. And the way that they hold on, so they do create suction when they hold on, which is what it looks like they're doing, right? And we can see that right there. You can see them really like poking them out there. But they also, scientists have discovered, they also produce an adhesive-like substance like glue. Isn't that amazing? They can produce like glue on their little feet here. So they're really good at holding on to things, which is especially important if they're living in a really rough environment like a tide pool. But there's another reason that they need these tube feet. So I was asking you about where their mouth is, right? So it's a little hard to tell here, but right there in the middle is their mouth. Now, if I were to ask you, what do they eat? You might think, well, maybe they like crawl along the ocean floor and gobble things up that they find, right? Because their mouth is underneath them. Many times animals that have mouths underneath, that's what they do. They scavenge for things. But my friends, these tube feet are very important for how they eat. I am considering these an extreme animal because of the extremely gross way that they eat their food. So these are carnivores, which means they eat other animals. And their favorite food to eat are things that live in really hard shells like this, like mussels or clams, lots of other animals like that, other invertebrates basically. So how do they get those shells open? Well, that's the other way that their tube feet come into play. They use their tube feet, they'll use their arms, stick onto those two shells and pry them open. So they have to be super strong in order to do that. There's not very many animals that can actually pry open those shells. Like, oh, here we go, perfect. Like mussels would be another example of something that they eat. A lot of animals that eat things like mussels, like birds, would have to fly up and then drop them onto the rocks, and that's how they crack open their shells. Sea stars are strong enough to pull them open. And then what do? Do they have teeth or something that helps them eat that soft body inside? No, my friends, they do something very gross. They actually invert their stomachs out into the shell, and this is that gooey stomach that we see right here. They'll inject it into the shell, digest that animal, and then slip it right back in like a smoothie. Yuck. And this is a great image of what that looks like when their stomach is out and they are digesting a nice, tasty meal. Can you imagine doing that, throwing up your stomach every time you wanted to eat something? I don't think so. Tell me what you think about that. Do you think that's gross? Or do you think, no, Miss Kaya, that's totally normal? I don't know why you're considering this an extreme animal. And this is also a really great image of the tube feet. You can see how they can all move independently, more or less, from one another. They have a very unique water vascular system, which is how they move and are able to get around to get all of their prey. Well, I happen to think that this is a pretty gross and a pretty extreme way of eating their food. Now, before we move on to our next group of invertebrates, I want to highlight one pretty extreme animal in this sea star family. Now, when we think of sea stars, and the reason they have their name is because of how many arms they have in their shape, right? Shape of a star, and they have 5 arms. But this, although many do have 5 arms, is not a defining characteristic. That's right, there are some sea stars out there with 10 arms, and there are some sea stars with 15 or even 24 arms, like our sunflower sea star here, which very often we call a sun star because, what do you think? Does it look like a sun? So this is the largest type of sea star out there. They can have 15 to 24 arms and be about 3 feet across when they are fully grown. So this is a very large sea star out there. And let's see, they can be up to 13 pounds as well. So also a very heavy sea star. And scientists think that this one also might be the fastest. I would say that this is not a very fast animal in general, so I'm not sure how they're measuring that. But being the largest sea star, it would make sense that they could also be the fastest one. Oh, Concha, you agree. Ew, totally gross. Yes, I think so too. But I think it is pretty cool to think about all the different ways that all animals have to eat. And sun stars like this one, oh, perfect. We can see underneath, right? Or is this the top? No, I think these are all the tube feet. So this is the underneath of a sun star. So you can see how many tube feet they have. Any guesses how many? More than 5, says Jen. Yes, you're right. More than 5. In fact, 15,000. Yeah, so lots and lots of tube feet. And their favorite food is urchins, sea urchins. So up to, I think it's 90% of their diet is urchins, these spiny guys right here. So when you have all of those arms and all of those tube feet, then cracking through that exoskeleton or that shell of the urchin is not going to be very difficult for them whatsoever. So pretty amazing animal. Okay, my friends, great questions and thoughts about our sea stars. But we're going to move on to my personal favorite of this whole group of invertebrates that we're talking about this morning. I've been learning a lot about them this week, and I'm super excited about them. We are going to be moving on to a crustacean. Any ideas what a crustacean is? So this group of animals includes things like crabs, lobster, and shrimp. And speaking of shrimp, that is at least the name of this next animal we are going to be talking about, the peacock mantis shrimp right here. Now, the reason I say just the name is because this is not actually a shrimp or in the shrimp family of crustaceans. We sometimes use names interchangeably. Unfortunately, it can be a little bit confusing. It is in a separate group of crustaceans, but it is in that crustacean family. So just a few quick features of crustaceans. So instead of having a shell on the outside of their body or not having anything at all, like our cephalopods, like octopus and cuttlefish, they have what we call an exoskeleton all around their body, which is kind of like having a little armor. So it is a hard covering, but another feature of, oh, perfect, here's another crab. We can really see that. Looks like a pretty hard animal, right? Not so soft and squishy like maybe our anemones. But they do have these joints here. So this is another feature of crustaceans and the larger group they belong to, arthropods, is that they have jointed legs. So unlike animals that live in, say, shells, they can actually move around, and they do have to molt out of them as they grow. So these hard exoskeletons do not grow with them. Okay, so our mantis shrimp. Why is this such an exciting animal? Well, first of all, take a look at it. What do you notice? Oh, so colorful, right? That's what Jen's noticing. I see that as well. And I also see these like googly like eyes right here. Do you see those eyes? So both of these things actually relate to one another. So they are very colorful, but my ocean rangers, if we were peacock mantis shrimps and we were looking at each other, we could actually see even more colors than we are able to see. So they have way more colors on them that is just not visible to us because our vision is not as good as theirs. Basically, it's just a little bit different. So they have what scientists think now the most complex eyes out of any animal on Earth. Please think about that for a moment. This little crustacean that's out in the ocean right now, maybe only about a foot long, has the most complex vision out of any animal on Earth. They have about, I think it's 3 times as many photoreceptors in their eyes than we do. So that means they can see, oh, no. Yeah, that's right. So they can see much wider range of vision than us. Pretty amazing. But even though this is a very extreme thing, that's actually not why I'm considering them an extreme animal for this. Oh, that's one of the reasons why. But there's another thing about them that I think makes them even more extreme. But let's take a quick look at this video so we can see them moving around, get a closer look at those colors that I was mentioning. Oh, we can also see, look, they move their eyes independently from one another. Can see them sensing things all around them. I think they're really cute, my friends. Jen agrees. Oh, scuttling back in. They're pretty shy. Ooh, do you see these right here? I wonder what they use those for. So this one I notice is Jen's favorite color, at least what it looks like to us. Blue and green. If you were to look at your favorite color on a mantis shrimp, what colors would you see? I wonder. Okay, so they have these amazing eyes, and then the way that they hunt is extra extreme, all right? So listen to this. This shrimp here is a puncher. That's right, they punch their prey. That's crazy, right? So they eat things that also have hard shells or exoskeletons, just like our sea star friend. But instead of prying open the shell, they punch through it. They can punch 50 miles per hour. Okay, so to put this in perspective, if we were able to punch like a little mantis shrimp here, we would be able to punch through steel. Okay, so that is how incredibly strong their little punches are. Now, Shinja is wondering, why do they need such great vision? And I think that's a really great question because, I don't know if we have an answer for that exactly. They definitely use colors to communicate with one another. They can see lots of colors on each other, so that might have something to do with it. They're also a prey animal. There are animals out there that would love to eat them as well. So I think having that great vision helps keep them safe so they're able to sense predators. I think this is still a field of study. They're not like cephalopods, like octopus and cuttlefish, that also have really amazing vision, but they camouflage, right? They change their colors to blend in with their environments or to hunt their prey. And so having that vision, there's a strong correlation there. With the mantis shrimp, I think it's just the way that they've evolved over time. I don't know if my colleagues have other thoughts on that, but yeah, so I think this is still an ongoing area of research for scientists. I do know that scientists are studying their vision and using that to apply to things that we can use in our everyday lives. So ways that we can maybe sense other things as well. So their vision is pretty amazing, and hopefully we'll continue to learn more about it. Thank you for the great question there, Shinja. Now, a few more thoughts on their punching abilities before we move on to our next animal. There's about 300 species of peacock mantis shrimps out there, and there are 2 types of punchers. That's right. They're not all the same types. And I imagine the 2 types has to do with their favorite type of prey items or prey animals out there. But there are some mantis shrimp that are what we call smashers. So they just smash through their prey. So they probably have to punch it a few times, and then that shell will eventually smash open. And then there are spearers. So they have these extra little spear-like appendages on their little clubs, and they'll spear their prey. Or spear the outside of their prey, I should say. And then once they break through that shell, they are able to get to that animal inside. So again, a pretty amazing crustacean with amazing vision and amazing adaptations to help it hunt. Let's watch the little video one more time. Tell me if you see anything else, and then we'll move on to our next extreme invertebrates. I wish I could move my eyes in multiple directions. What do you think? Wouldn't that be cool? Yeah. Now, my friends, we've been very lucky to have them here at the aquarium. This can be a tricky animal to take care of here because you do have to make sure that the glass you have is the right type of glass because they have been known to punch through it. So typically we use acrylic for an animal like this, which is harder for them to break through. And I was also lucky enough to see one diving when I was in Indonesia, so I could tell you that they are just as colorful and bright as this one here when we are able to see them in the wild, which is amazing. Okay, so we've talked about echinoderms, we have talked about crustaceans. Now I would like to talk a little bit about a cephalopod. I was about to say mollusk because that's the big family they're a part of, which is any invertebrate that just has that soft body. But cephalopods have lost their shell. So they are closely related to other mollusks, like, not closely related, but they're in the same family as animals with shells, but they have lost that shell over time. So cephalopods include octopus and squid, and the one we're about to talk about, cuttlefish. Have you heard of a cuttlefish before? I tend to think that octopus get all of the cephalopod attention. So that's why I wanted to take a moment to talk about these because they are just as amazing as octopus. I personally think they have a lot of the same adaptations. So when you think of an octopus, what are some of the things that come to mind about it? You know, what is so special about octopus? So one thing you might be thinking of is their color change, their ability to camouflage. And cuttlefish have the exact same ability. And while we're looking at this picture, we're going to watch a cool video of them changing color in a moment, but we can also just take a quick look at some of their other features that let us know that this is in the cephalopod family. So we see what looks like a big head here, and that's what cephalopod means, head, foot, because of their arms or tentacles that they have attached to it. And then we see this eye here, right? So like I mentioned a little bit earlier, cephalopods are known for having really great vision. So cuttlefish included. And again, this is likely due to, or this is very closely related to their ability to change color. They do see color differently, though, than we do, and even the mantis shrimp does. Us and the mantis shrimp rely on what we call a photoreceptor to detect colors, and they don't use that mechanism. They, in fact, only have one photoreceptor. For a long time, scientists thought that meant they were colorblind, and then they realized that they actually are just able to see a wider spectrum of light and are able to see more colors that way. So somebody is saying 8 arms for cuttlefish. Yes, they do have 8 arms, just like an octopus. And this is actually a moment where we can talk about the difference between arms and tentacles, because very often we get those two confused. Are those arms or are there tentacles? And there is a difference between the two of them. So in this picture, we can see all of those arms very clearly as we can with if we were looking at an octopus. But cuttlefish also have 2 tentacles. Now, if we were to lift one of these arms up, at least on an octopus, we would see they are covered in suction cups. Now, tentacles also have suction cups, but only on the very tips. So that is how we can tell the difference. Tentacles also tend to be a little bit longer. Any ideas why you might need something a little bit longer with suction cups on the tips? It's to help them eat and grab their food. So let's take a look at them using this in action. Oh, here's just a cute little cuttlefish. Now, if you're wondering, why are they called cuttlefish? So it's not cuddle as in cuddle, although I do think they look pretty cuddly. They are called cuttlefish because they have a cuttle bone inside of them. This is the remnant of their shell, essentially, and this helps them with buoyancy. So there's actually holes in that cuttle bone. And so that, when I say buoyancy, what I mean is that helps them be in the level of water that they want to be. That helps them swim through the water column. Now, you might also be looking at this and thinking, but isn't that a squid, Miss Kaya? And they do look very similar, and the way to really tell the difference between them is to watch them swim. So squid swim using jet propulsion. They pull water into their mantle and then push it out of their siphon, which is a little tube. This is also how octopus swim. Cuttlefish are honestly not the best swimmers. That's why having all of these color changing abilities is really important for them, because they also don't have a hard shell to protect them or any sort of hard covering like many invertebrates in the water do. So having that ability to camouflage is a particularly important adaptation. But they swim using this little fin all the way around it. And they're kind of awkward swimmers, if you ask me. They sort of like bob through the water a little bit, but they are very, very cute, I think. And Shinja is wondering if cuttlefish texture can change like octopus. And the answer is yes, they can. They have both chromatophores, which are the skin cells that allow them to open and close and change their color. And they have papillae, which is what allows them to change their texture. And both of those are controlled by nerves. And the reason why they're so good at it is because every single one of those chromatophores is actually controlled by one nerve. Very, very precise and amazing ability. So maybe we can take a look at that video of them using both their tentacles and strike. And did you see what happened? Changed its color. Watch again. Oh, we can see it rippling around. Oh, and the way it's using its color changing abilities here is pretty amazing. And then just changes in milliseconds. So incredibly fast. All right, let's talk a little bit about that color changing. Oh, perfect. I just can't get over them. I think they're so cute. All right, so color changing. So we have talked a little bit, and I'm sure you're familiar with why they change to blend into their environment. So they definitely do that. They don't have that hard covering, so there are a lot of animals out there that would love to eat cuttlefish. So being able to blend in, very, very important. But did you notice what it was doing while it was hunting? It was also changing its color. So cuttlefish are known to change their colors in sort of a rippling effect while they're hunting to sort of almost mesmerize or hypnotize their prey. So that is one way that they'll use their color changing. And sometimes, depending on the predator that's chasing them, they'll also flash their colors to try and scare them off or startle them. You saw how quickly they were able to change their colors. So just imagine if you were trying to eat it and suddenly, this animal flashed a whole bunch of, different colors right in your face. It might be a little bit intimidating. You might not be as interested in eating it. And the last way that they've used their color changing is to communicate to one another. So they'll communicate to other cuttlefish maybe when they're ready to mate, or maybe if they're warning about something. So it's still something that we're studying and trying to understand more about. But cuttlefish are also pretty amazing at changing their colors. All right, I see Shinja and Kansha are wondering why cuttles are considered an invertebrate if they have a bone. Such a great question and connection that you are making there, because yeah, you're right. It's like if they do have that bone, but the answer is really in the name. So it is called a cuttle bone, but in reality, it's actually a remnant of the shell that their other relatives and ancestors had. So over time, that shell just got reduced till eventually it's just like a little sliver. So it isn't actually a bone in the same way that we have bones. They just call it that. They call it a cuttle bone. And I know that is really confusing, right? Why wouldn't they call it a cuttle shell? I'm not sure exactly. But I love that you're thinking about that. I will say that cuttle bone, it does, do a little bit of the same things our bones do, right? If we think of our bones, they provide our body structure, and that's part of what the cuttle bone does for cuttles. Oh, it's swimming. So see, we can really see it using its fins there, and they really tuck their arms and tentacles down to like help them move through the water a little bit better. But yeah, so that cuttle bone, it helps give their mantle structure here. So octopus don't have anything at all, and if you watch them sort of swim and move around, they're like woo, all over the place, and they're really good at sort of crawling through crevices. So cuttles and squid won't do that, and part of that is because of that internal structure that they have to give their body shape. But they are amazing camouflagers, so it's just a trade-off there. So there's always going to be trade-offs to whatever sort of structure that you have. All right, ocean rangers, I hope you enjoyed learning about some extreme invertebrates out there. It was wonderful to have you participate along. We have more fun programming for you this afternoon, and we have another Ocean Ranger class tomorrow at 11. I'm blanking on the topic right now, but I'm sure it's going to be an amazing class. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll see you next time. Take care.